All right. Hello and welcome Just a Family. This is giving you something to talk about, or Just a Live TV, as I like to call it. I am your host, Melissa Krechler. I'm an identity coach, spiritual teacher, business mentor, and creator and founder of not only Just a Live TV, but the Women Supporting Women Can Network. Today, we're going to be talking about podcasting in 2023. I'm super excited for this episode because I have two podcasts of my own, so why not talk about them? Today's episode has been sponsored by the Women Supporting Women Can Network. That if you're a woman who is passionate about helping other women and you want to bring your podcast, your brand, your support to women around the globe, then join the Facebook group. You can find the link in the description of this episode. So join the Women Supporting Women Network. Today's guest speaker is John Papaloni, and I hope I said that properly. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is John Papaloni. I am a serial entrepreneur. I have I have had many businesses in my day. I've bought some, closed some, sold some. So like everybody else, it's been an up and down journey, but it's been a fun journey. I mean, currently I have three things: that I'm a real estate agent, a mortgage agent, and I have what's called Papaloni Capital, which is basically an investment business. So I have my own podcast as well. I specialize in like my whole background before real estate was marketing. So and I had an 8-figure business that I sold. So podcasting is obviously one of the tools I use to market myself and build my personal brand. I think it is basically the way of not the future, but today.
Absolutely. And that's what we're really getting into today is podcasting. So I post in Facebook groups and across social media that I'm looking for guest speakers because I wanted something a little bit different. I tell this story whenever I do a pre-screening interview. I tell this story, so I'm going to tell the world to it today. When I started the show, it was because I really felt like I wanted a platform where people felt like it was a conversation. They were part of a conversation. I grew up watching the Oprah Winfrey Show where she had different guests on every day. And it was not, hey, what are you doing? It's, hey, how are you? What have you been up to? It was more of a story rather than a sales pitch or anything like that. So I wanted something different, which is why I created Giving You Something to Talk About. And as the name would say, I wanted to give people something that they could take and start creating conversations of their own, whether that be inspired content, whether that be triumph over struggle. So I created this show and podcast for that reason. And I absolutely love it.
Which makes sense. I mean, that's the whole point. That's one of the things I love about podcasting myself is because you get to share your own message rather than taking a topic. Like, look, when you watch TV and you watch the talk shows, there's some that are very good, but a lot of them are very scripted, and on certain topics, you have no control. It's sort of like you're there or you're not there, where podcasting gives the ability for people to be interactive and share ideas and, like you said, converse, where on a non-scripted level, so you get the actual information.
Yeah, exactly. And so the different types of podcasts, you've got business podcasts, you've got spiritual health and wellness. I have another podcast called Spiritually Aligned Mindset that I started a few years ago. And it's all about spirituality and mindset, doing things your own way. There's your podcast. So tell us about your podcast. What's yours all about?
Mine is about entrepreneurship, leadership, and of course, real estate. So I kind of combine them all. And because I mean, again, a serial entrepreneur. So I absolutely love talking about business, and part of business is different forms of leadership. And then on top of that, I'm in the real estate business. That's my main business. So obviously I'm going to be talking about real estate a lot and about the market and what's going on. But I take it from a standpoint of education and less about sales. Like on my podcast, you never hear me selling a product. You don't hear buy, sell. Ooh, got to get into the market now. It's going crazy. It's like, you don't hear any of that stuff from me. It's really just about education, like people looking to invest. And, I talk about the step-by-step opportunities, how to get into it, where to find financing, how to prepare for it. And some of the things that may come up when you're looking, as well as, I also interview other, real estate people or investors to talk about how they got into the journey and how they, what propelled them to do it and some of the benefits of that.
And that's the beautiful thing. Podcasting today. So podcasting started about 10, 15 years ago now, really getting into it in the last 10 years. And you can find podcasts literally on everything and anything. You can find ones that are specific to a certain niche or a certain topic. You can find ones that are more generalized, like mine, where you gonna run the gambit, right? You get to pick and choose what you listen to and what you don't listen to. And I think there's different styles. I always tell people when I first start the interview process is it's not an interview, right?
Yes.
It's not scripted. It's not a handful of questions that I'm going to ask you. It's, hey, what do you think? What's your topic? What are you interested in? And it's really just getting into the heart of what my audience wants, but also what my guest speakers want.
Well, absolutely. See, and this is the thing, like you said, there's different ways to do it. It doesn't look, there's solo podcasts. Sometimes people do solo episodes where they're talking to their audience. Sometimes it's guest interviews where it's like a typical interview that you would see where we're on TV or YouTube or whatever, where it's like, a list of questions for someone to answer. Sometimes it's a book launch. People or talk about their book. Sometimes it could be, news and events and everything that's going on. And sometimes it's just casual conversation, like you said. So it's really what inspires you and what does your audience want to see. And everyone has a different audience and it's about catering to them.
Yep. My other podcast is solo. And it's, if I have inspired content that I feel really really powerful about sharing, I'll go and I'll do a random, and that podcast is absolutely random. There is no rhyme, reason, or scheduling to that podcast. It's just whenever I feel inspired, that's when I post something. And so getting into podcasting in 2023, because it's such a large industry at this point, and the fact that you can find anything and everything, do you think that it's becoming oversaturated, or do you think that, it's sky's the limit?
Well, combination. And here's what I mean. Right now, the podcasting is actually on a decline. Data showing that there's fewer and fewer new podcasts coming out in comparison to the past. Now, some of that I think was fueled by the so-called pandemic that we just came out of. And here's what I mean. When you're at home and you're just sitting around, you have to sort of decide what you want to do. So now podcasting becomes interesting to many people, not just businesses. So what ended up happening is everyone had a great idea. They got their mics and their computers and stuff. They got Zoom, started using it and started recording themselves and got the wonderful idea of podcasting. Now that everyone's kind of going back to work, there's more distraction. Mm-hmm. So now it went from hobbyist to people who are actually serious that are still sticking around and in the business.
Yeah. And
therefore, that's going to create some fluctuations. At the same time, we went from an era where people would say, I have a podcast, and then be, what's a podcast? And to now everyone, if you mention the name Joe Rogan, I mean, I don't know if there's very many people that wouldn't know who that is. Right. So it's become popular, some for good reasons, some for not. But it's become popular. And do I think it's oversaturated? A bit. Now, I think it takes a lot more work than it used to. If you had a podcast before and you just started it, it was easy to get popular. Where now you have to basically provide value if you want to retain people who are actually tuning in. Because people tune in, listen to a brief bit about your show, and if they don't hear value and they just think it's boring, they won't be back. Mm-hmm. Or before there were so few of them, you can afford to miss a few times and it still wouldn't be detrimental, where today that's not the case.
Yeah. You think about a couple of years ago too, before, like pre-pandemic, is on the way to work. People would listen on their way to work. They'd listen while they're working out. They'd listen while they're working. Whatever the flexibility would be on, you do this, you have this routine, and that's when you would listen, right? And social media now, and I think society now, has really brought in a little bit more of the flicker. And what I mean by flicker is, if you look at something, you've got TikTok, you've got Instagram Reels, you've got Facebook Reels, you've got, 7-second videos where it's like, hey, quick, 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 and you're just scrolling through, and it's like a flicker. It's a 1 to 10-second flicker of your attention. And our attention spans aren't sitting here listening to a half-hour podcast or an hour podcast about something that, maybe they're interested in, maybe they're not, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Attention spans have become shorter as a result, like you said. And this is the thing. Now, what fueled podcasts before, and podcasts typically, prior to pandemic, were considered audio only.
Mm-hmm.
And the main thing was people would play it through the phone, play it through the car using Bluetooth, and they would listen to it on the way to work. Now, the average drive time, at least where I am, is somewhere between 20 to 30 minutes to work. So, and we'll use my own podcast, average listen time is 24 minutes. Some people have longer drives, so they listen longer. Some people have shorter, listen shorter, middle ends up being 24 minutes. So with that being said, that's the average listen time. So when you get an hour, not a lot of people are going to hit that hour long podcast. Now, if you're 15 minutes, it might be a little bit too short. So doing 20 to 30 minutes tends to be a good ideal target. But where the pandemic has expanded podcasting is now video. So now YouTube videos in a podcast format where it's like hour-long interviews, that has become popular. So that is where it's kind of changed. So now video and audio can be combined. Now, I don't think that one is better than the other. It's a matter of who are your listeners, who are your target, and where will people, pay attention to you. If you're targeting somebody that's at home, more than likely they're going to want the video. If you're targeting somebody who's listening on the road, they're not watching video while they're driving, or at least we hope they're not.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I did so many options, right? We live stream to video, YouTube, all of that. But we also have, like, as soon as the video is done, it's uploaded to the podcast, right? And it goes out throughout there. So it's nice to have that ability to target people kind of wherever they're at the same time. So podcasting, do you think there's any downfalls to podcasting, or, things that maybe the podcasting industry should look into or change?
Downfalls, not so much as that. I think the downfalls of podcasting has the same kind of downfall social media has. And what I mean is people get hooked on vanity metrics. And I find that there's a lot more depression and mental, issues out there than there was, say, even 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I think the fact that people are glued to their phones and stuck to the screens, and they're putting such high value into these vanity metrics, it is disturbing them psychologically. And I don't think this is a permanent thing. I think eventually we'll all adapt and find our way. But I think we're in that midpoint where we're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah. So do you have anything that you would suggest for podcasters, whether they're established podcasters, new, kind of in the middle, any suggestions you would have?
Yeah, if even for new people, especially new people, focus less on the equipment and focus more on being consistent. Too many people are worried about what kind of equipment they have and how much things cost, and they'll start when. Instead of starting when, just start. You could start with your phone. It doesn't have to be anything, glamorous. And then when you're ready for the next purchase, then get to the next purchase, then build yourself, then develop. But it's more important that you're consistent, and you have to decide from the beginning how often you're going to do it. Now, if you're going to start every second week, as an example, promote that. Yeah, you're on every second week. As long as people know that it's every 2 weeks and you never falter, never change, never obstruct, then that'll be fine, because people eventually, when they get to know your content and like your content and they follow, they're looking for stuff. And if you just disappear for a month or two and then come back, they've lost interest. They've already looked at other things. So you want to be consistent, and that's the most important thing. Now, when you go past the consistent and you want to now invest in something, invest it in a microphone, because the sound is more important than the video, because people will pay attention to crappy video if they can understand what you're saying, but they won't pay attention if you have clear video, but they can't hear a word you're saying.
Yeah. And oddly enough, so when I decided to start this show, I'm using my regular everyday computer. I'm using the audio on my computer. I happen to have a very decent computer. And I just started it.
There you go.
I just started it, right? It took me a little while there was some kinks with the first month or two. But I started it and I decided, hey, this works for me. I like it. This is what I want. I think for anybody starting out is figure out what you want, right? That ultimately, yes, you're providing value to the people who are listening to your podcast, but at the same time, it has to feed your soul doing it. It has to mean something to you, and it has to bring you some sort of exchange, not energetic exchange, whether it's something you love to talk about, whether it's something you really want people to understand. There has to be a purpose for you to be doing what you're doing, and not just because it's the newest fad.
100%. And that's even going back to what I was saying in terms of consistency. Like if I'm elaborating, consistency is more than just how often you're putting the podcast together, but it's about following a topic. Like if you're in the pizza business and you want to talk about pizzas, fine and dandy. And I'm not saying you have to talk about pizzas. I mean, if you're only talking about how you cook pizzas, you're going to get very boring very quick. But my point I'm getting at is it could always be about, for example, the topic would be food. So you can it doesn't have to be just about the pizza shop, but it could be other ways of recipes. It could be, new discoveries, new restaurants or something like that. But if you're doing that, then you're talking about oil changes on your car. It becomes very confusing. So it's like, are you a mechanic or are you a restaurant person? Like, what do you do? Like, it's more important to select, like you said, you have to be passionate about it as well. Otherwise, it's easy to lose interest. If you're doing it because you just want sales and I want to just sell, buy, and that's your message, well, you're going to go through that for 3 months. You're not going to get any results or nowhere near what you're expecting. You're going to get very bored and you're going to drop it. Where if it's something that you're very passionate about and you stick to that passion, you'll follow through and you'll learn new things and you'll pass on new tips. You'll pass on new things that you'll learn. You'll pass on experiences that you've been through. And that's how you're going to keep things real fresh and energetic for everybody watching. So people who share your passion will be the ones who are going to follow you. And those are going to be the ones that are going to suggest you to other people. Where if you're all over the place, how can someone recommend you when they don't know what you do? Mm-hmm. And so consistency is not just the frequency, but what you're doing overall.
Yeah, exactly. Why do you like podcasting?
Well, short form is that I've always wanted to be on radio, and I never really cared for the music. I guess I like the sound of my own voice. So podcasting is a way to get the modern day radio without the music.
Yep.
That's a short form.
That's all right. I like it. And it's funny when you're starting out, you and I are both serial entrepreneurs. I'm currently launching my 7th business. And with that, it's interesting how your passions shift and how your, vision of what you want shifts. I did a presentation probably about 8 years ago. I did a presentation or 7 years ago. And I did it in front of my local chamber of commerce. And I was laughing because I was vibrating. I do not like being the center of attention. I have stage fright. I don't like the sound of my own voice or being seen on camera. And yet in one day, I sat down and said, I want to start a talk show. I want it to be through video. I want it to be live. I want all this. And it worked, right? Completely shifted everything that I thought and just did it. And look at it's a year and a half later.
Yeah. Well, this is the funny part, right? Like it's even for me, like obviously I like the radio part. I like the audio part, but I never wanted to be in pictures. There was a video, I'd be the guy to hide so you couldn't get me on video. Mm-hmm. Now here I am. I basically built I got myself basically I can create a studio where I am. I have $25,000 in audio video equipment. And I make a joke because originally I was going to start up a media business to do it for other people. This is before I got my mortgage license. My intent was what I call Papaloni Media, right? Which is still around, but that's self-serving for my own podcast. But that's besides the point. so I thought about it, and I was going to create this studio where I can have other people and they can record themselves, and I can, charge them for that, and that, like, I can in a way make a broadcasting business. And I was all excited and all that. Then I thought about it and I said, you know what? I'm in the real estate business. So one minute I'm talking about real estate, next minute I'm talking about, hey, let me do a podcast for you. And I thought it doesn't really complement each other. So, and I thought if I get into the mortgage business, my charge is actually a lot more. Let's be honest. I do a podcast, I get $300 to $500. If I do a mortgage, my worst mortgage, I'll pay $1,000. And it's not all about the money. Don't misunderstand the term. But the point is, the mortgages kind of go with the real estate sales. It kind of go with real estate investment. It kind of goes with the private equity investments, right? So Papaloni Capital, mortgages, Papaloni Capital, mortgages, real estate, they all circle around each other. So that makes sense. Going from, hey, let me help you find a house, and by the way, we should set up a podcast studio, kind of doesn't really go together.
Yeah.
And like in that way. So that's how I kind of did that. So I always make a joke with my friends. I spent 25 grand so I can have a bunch of cameras to film myself, because I've become so, and obsessed with being on camera. Now I've got 3 or 4 cameras to record myself with.
I love it. And then there's me, who has literally just the range of the gambit. I have identity coaching, spiritual teaching, a women's network, a talk show. I have products and services. I do readings, and I'm just launching an inappropriate product line. So
there we go.
So I run the gambit here. And you know what? It works for me because I have different streams of income, different streams of productivity. I'm a very creative person, multi-passionate, and I didn't want to limit, right? But every single one of the things that I do has a purpose that align together. Happiness, self-care, self-love. My inappropriate product line is all about laughter, right?
Yeah.
There's
I get that.
That I've created that's do me a favor, shut the F up, which is what I say to my own husband. I'm like, do me a favor.
There we go. Love that.
You know what I mean? It's laughter, it's comic, it's comedic reliefs, but everything that I do has that underlining passion of I want to help the world be happier. And that's my goal.
Well, see, that's the thing, right? And it goes back there. It's aligned to your passion, right? For me, the podcasting was a way for me to be in denial. And what I mean by that is, look, I helped a friend of mine. He recorded, like he usually does solo podcasts, or he does virtual, but he wanted to record his barber on, do a local business. And I set up to record for him. Now, I met the barber, nice guy. My friend's a nice guy and all that. But that hour they were recording, I was bored as crap. And that's when I kind of realized I'm going, you know what? I'm in denial here. I made it sound like I needed this equipment so I can do this stuff for other people, but I don't really want to do it. I think I'm trying to convince myself, because maybe I felt guilty to say that I'm going to spend 25 grand to buy equipment to record myself. Right. Or maybe I felt that it was egocentric or something, and I didn't want to have that appearance, but who am I kidding? This was for me.
Yeah.
Let's get out of denial and get into what it really is.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we get going about podcasting?
I just want to say that, it is a great opportunity to share who you are. And I think that it's a great opportunity to even use it to create content. Like if you like sharing on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or whatever, like rather than thinking of new ideas all the time and trying to figure out what to share, you can do a podcast, take a 20 to 30 minute segment like the one we just did, and then you can splice that up into 8 to 10 pieces that you can share, like of 1 or 2 minute videos that you can share across each platform. So you can try to figure out each day what to post, or you can do one podcast and have 8 to 10 pieces without having to think about it. It's just an easy way to create content and share your message at the same time.
All right. Well, thank you so much, John, for joining me today. I really appreciated your time and your conversation.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, if anybody would like to get in touch with John, please do so. His links are in the description of this episode. If you are a woman entrepreneur or podcaster who would be interested in helping other women entrepreneurs or podcasters, go and check out the Women Supporting Women Can Network group link in the description. I'm your host, Melissa Krechler, and I will see all of you on the next episode.